Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today I am creating a window card, so when you open it up you get to see the rest of the image. I'm using the Gerda Steiner Designs Manatee set and also the mirror die set by Ellen Hudson, which instead of using it as a mirror, I'm using it as a submarine window. So I'm going to start by stamping my Manatee onto some Strathmore 90-pound watercolor paper. I'll cover it with clear embossing powder and heat it. Now I'm just using one Inktense pencil called Payne's Gray. I've got my aqua painter and my tissue ready. And what I'm going to do is color the edges of this image very lightly. So you want to make sure you don't have too sharp of a tip. You want it to be very kind of blunt. And you're going to go around the edges. I'm making the edges a little bit thicker on the bottom because I want it to be a little darker down there and a little thinner on the top. So when I take my aqua painter, you can see I'm starting in the white area and then moving towards the color, and then I'm pulling the color out. And what this does is it wets your paper first, so when the color comes out, it automatically starts to blend and lay nicely on your cardstock. So I'm just going to repeat this all over the place, and I'm going to cover the whole thing with the gray, but my hope is that it's going to be a little bit darker on the edges. And you can see that it is definitely darker on the edges, and I added a little bit of a shadow to his tail back there. Now for my second round of color, I'm doing 2 rounds. I'm going to pull color directly from the pencil. And what I'm doing here is I'm just going over the darkest shadow areas with a little bit more color. So you can see you get a lot of color just by pulling just a tiny bit from the tip of the pencil. So I'm going to go over all the shadow areas like this, and it won't ruin your pencil doing this at all, and it's really super easy to blend, especially since I'm doing it wet over wet, so my first layer didn't really dry first. And then I'm going to cut him out with a scissor. Next I'm going to work on my background. I have 3 different colors of Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to put them all 3 down on my craft mat here. I have Cracked Pistachio, Salty Ocean, and Broken China, and they're all going to get kind of mixed up, but that's okay because I just want a hint of each one of these colors. So I am going to spritz this with some water. I'm using Distress Oxide inks because then I can layer my color pretty easily. So I'm going to zoom in here so you can see exactly how much water I have. Not too much. If you put too much water, then it's going to become really diluted. So I'm going to take my watercolor paper. This is Strathmore 90-pound. And I'm just going to move it around and dab it in there and turn it over and see how I like it. It's pretty good, but I'm going to tap it a couple more times and just make sure that I have enough area covered where I like it. And then I'm going to take my heat tool and I'm going to heat this up. So I'm speeding it up, and I'm going to use my tissue to kind of grab the big puddles because I'm only taking a section of this paper out. Okay, so now I've got that dry. I'm going to dab it down again, and you can see that it's much more pronounced as far as dots and lines and water stains. So once I get a little bit more, I'm going to heat it up and see if I like it. And I really wanted a look that was very spotty and also had some white areas in it, so I didn't want it to be too dark. All right, I'm going to use this heart here and cut it out of some real red paper. And I have a piece of scratch paper that I'm going to adhere my red heart to so that I can keep it in place and I don't have to hold it. And I'm going to cover this with some Versamark ink. So I want my heart to be more of like a glossy embellishment, so I'm going to heat emboss it with some clear powder. Now the clear powder I'm using is called Ultra Thick Clear Embossing Enamel, I think. And up close here you can see that it's the consistency of granulated sugar. So it's much coarser and thicker than regular clear embossing powder. Now the trick here to make sure that your powder doesn't go flying everywhere, which it often does, is to take your heat tool and start far away. So you're going to start far, move closer as the embossing powder starts to melt until finally you can see that it's really starting to melt, and then you can get even closer until it's all melted. So if you get too close too soon, it will just fly everywhere. So I'm going to do this twice, and the reason why I'm doing it twice is because I want it to be a really, really thick, glossy layer, and you can see how pretty this is. Now you would think that it would stick to my paper here, but it really doesn't. I just put my paper piercer underneath, and once I get that adhesive off, then it looks good. It's completely off, and it looks really nice. So I'm going to take my Manatee and cut his arm just a little bit. I'm cutting it on the left side of the line so that the outside outline image stays with the arm. Then I'll take my heart and add some 2A glue to the back, and I'm just going to slide it right in there so it looks like my manatee is swimming and holding a heart. The next thing I'm going to work on is the submarine window. I'm going to use some smoky slate paper so that I'm sort of starting with a silvery color. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with the heart, which is adhere this to a piece of scratch paper. And then I'm going to cover the whole thing with Versamark ink. And now I'm going to cover it with some silver embossing powder. I use Ranger Ultra Fine embossing powder. And you can see how pretty this looks, but I'm going to do it again, sprinkle it and heat emboss it, and then I'm going to do it a third time. And this is going to give me a really thick metallic so that it actually looks like metal finish. And it comes right off with my paper piercer here. I'm going to give you an up-close view really quick, and you can see how nice this looks. It looks really, really thick. I have the We Are Memory Keepers nesting circle dies, so I just picked a good size that would work with my card. This is 2.5 inches in diameter. And then I took one that was one size down, so 2 1/4, and I'm going to cut the hole on the front part of my fog cardstock. And this is so that you can see through the window. I'm going to put some 2A glue on the back side of my mirror here. And the circle that I cut was just about the same size as my mirror, but a little bit bigger so that I knew I couldn't see the edge. So it's going to be a little bit, showing a little bit through the other side, but it wasn't enough to really bother me at all. So I'm just going to make sure that it's centered and lined up, and then I'll press it down. I felt that the window looked a little bland, so I took a Stampin' Up! Black marker and I just colored in all of these little circles all the way around. And sorry, my head is in the way there, but I think it looks a lot better with the black circles. I thought it would be nice to round the corners. I'm using my 1/8 of an inch side of my corner chomper, and that way it sort of coordinates with the circle. Okay, now I have to put my background, so I'm just going to figure out where it needs to go so that it's fully covered when I close the card. And I'm going to mark this with my pencil so that I know exactly where to put it back, because I'm going to use some tape runner so there won't be a lot of wiggle room once I put it down. So I'll put it right back down inside my pencil marks and press it down. Now for my manatee, I'm going to use some Tombow Mono Multi-Glue because it is kind of a thick piece of paper and I want to make sure it's flat and secure. And because I'm using liquid glue, I do have a little bit of wiggle room if I want to reposition it. So I'm just going to make sure it's exactly where I want it, where the heart is showing through the front, but not the whole thing. And then I will take my sentiment, which comes with the manatee set, and I'm going to ink it up with some VersaFine black onyx ink and stamp it just to the right so it's underneath his tail. And that is the card for today. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.